Welcome to week 5 of our First John study. I hope that you are just falling more and more in love with this book. I definitely am, and it's just such a privilege to get to slow it down a bit and sit in a passage for a while. I have been doing the workbook along with you. Even the parts that I wrote, I'm redoing them. And sometimes I have to remind myself about who wrote what part. And I'm like, did I write this or this? Oh, that's it. Anyway, I'm right there with you. And it's been encouraging to just sit long in First John. And I hope that it is becoming something that you're loving more and more. So we are in week 5, and today we're going to be looking at John chapter 3. So if you want to open your Bible up to 1 John, let me make sure I say it correctly, chapter 3. We're going to be concentrating on verses 1 through 10. But before we get there, let me just make a comment about my shirt, because you may have noticed that I am wearing a volleyball shirt. This is a Manheim Township, which is the school where my kids have gone, the district that they live in, and it's a volleyball shirt for that. So I am wearing this shirt for a very specific reason, but you're going to have to wait to hear why I'm wearing it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit later, but I kind of wanted to just tease your mind with it a little bit as to why in the world is Mandy wearing a t-shirt to film the lesson. So we will get back into that later, and I'll tell you my reason for it, and maybe you can guess it anyway. Okay, 1 John chapter 3, verse 1 says, "See what kind of love the Father has given us, that we should be called children of God. And so we are. The reason why the world does not know us is that it did not know him." We're going to stop with verse 1, and we're going to talk about verse 1 for a while. And once again, we find ourselves with John being very excited. You can hear it within his language in this passage. And if you were able to do some of our homework this week, we dived deeper into verse 1, this verse, and we asked you to look it up a couple of versions. We even showed it to you in the Message version. So let me just give you a couple of examples, because when we look at it in different versions, we see the excitement that he says. So the ESV, which is what I read out of, says, "See what kind of love." The NIV says, "See what great love." The NASB 20, which is, it's so funny how we just make it more and more complicated by giving these names, which is the New American Standard Bible in 2020, says, "See how great a love." And the Message says, "What marvelous love." So there is this excitement that John has about the love that God is giving to us. And why does he say it? What is he celebrating? "See what kind of love the Father has given us, that we should be called," here it is, "children of God. And so we are." He is celebrating the fact that we are children of God. And he is bringing this theme up, and he's going to repeat it over and over and talk about the fact that we are in God's family. And that's what we want to talk about. This idea of being born of God is distinctly a Johannine theme. So that's just meaning that John uses it repeatedly in his writing. So let me show you, let's go over to the book of John, the Gospel of John, and let's take a look at where else he uses it. So John chapter 1, verse 12, but says, "But to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God." So those who believed in this coming Messiah are ones that are children of God. Let's go back up. Let's read a couple extra verses to put that in better context. Verse 9, "The true light." Okay, do you remember that in 1 John he's also talking about the light versus the darkness? He also does it here in the gospel. "The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, yet the world did not know him." Because you see so many parallels with 1 John. Anyway, verse 11, "He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him." 12, "But to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God." So he's talking about that again, that being born of God. He's going to bring it up in John chapter 3 when John tells us the story of Jesus meeting with Nicodemus and having a conversation. And Jesus is quoted as saying, verse 3, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God." And Nicodemus is like, how can a man be born again? But Jesus says, truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God. That which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. Do not marvel that I say to you, you must be born again. So this is something that John speaks about often, and he's saying, you are so loved. This great, marvelous love that God is giving to us is that we are children of God. That's the type of love that God has given to us. And within that verse 1, it says, the reasons the world does not know us is that it did not know him. So it's that same kind of thing that was in the book of John, of this confusion. They rejected him. They didn't know him. He's saying that's also true of you. So this idea of being children of God, to being within the family of God, it's a familial relationship. It's an intimate relationship, and it's one that should bring us great joy. Let me give you a quote from a commentator about the way that John uses this. While the New Testament sometimes uses the image of adoption for our relationship to God, John's image is even stronger than that. The believer is born of God. Former children of the devil become the children of God through the process of rebirth. John claims that the children of God bear a genetic relationship to God. So I want you to think for a moment, what is it like to be a child of God? So we did this within our homework. We talked from Romans about the fact that we are adopted, and we can cry, Abba, Father, which is an intimate cry that we can cry out to him. And then John is saying, not only are you adopted, but you actually are, like, you genetically are the children of God. It's going to be lived out in how you act and what you do. And that's going to go further in our passage. But before we get there, I just want you to think about that relationship within the family. And here is the reason that I am wearing my shirt today. So why is Mandy wearing a Manheim Township volleyball t-shirt? Is it because I go to Manheim Township High School and I play on the volleyball team? No, of course not. Is it because I'm an alumni and I graduated from Manheim Township and I used to be on the volleyball team? No, of course not. You know exactly why I'm wearing this shirt. I'm wearing the shirt because one of my kids is on the Manheim Township volleyball team. It's my son, and this is his second year playing for them. And my son has just kind of gone from sport to sport. And this one I think he's going to stick with, and he really loves in a different way than he's loved the others. Or I don't even know that he loved the others, but anyway, that he enjoyed the other sports. So I have the gear that goes with it, because when I go to the game, I want to be a part of what he's doing. I want to be associated with him. I want to be his biggest fan that's sitting in the stands. So do I only have a volleyball shirt? No, I brought with you, I have a closet full of this stuff. I've got Manheim Township soccer from when my daughter was there. I told you my son played different sports. So I have Manheim Township cross country because he ran cross country. And then my kids move on from high school and they end up going to college. And I have a LBC soccer sweatshirt because my daughter played for LBC. And then I was thinking about the fact that these choir people, they get left out because we don't have as cool swag for the choir, because I have a daughter who's in the choir at her college. So I just have her college sweatshirt, which is CIU, because they didn't make choir ones, but they need to, so that I could wear the choir one. But anyway, when I go to the game and I sit in the game, I am watching my child. That's my kid. And I am watching every single goal or block or kill or whatever the sport is. I know when they have a PR. I know when they're doing well. And I am celebrating every moment like that. And then I also know when things are going badly. And I know, I can tell by the facial expression. I know the nuances of when the coach pulls them out and how they're going to feel about it. And what they, even when they're on the sideline, I'm still watching them, because I am like, oh, she's mad. Oh, she's really mad. Did you see that? She walked all the way to the end. She's not talking to anybody. She's feeling really frustrated, or whatever it is. because that's what I'm focused on. And I was even thinking of, some of you may remember this from the Olympics several years ago. Allie, a gymnast, they have like a scene of her parents watching her do her routine. I think it was the bar routine, and they are just like move and they are doing the entire routine with her from the stands, and they are so into it, and they are just like celebrating or getting sad. So why did I go off on all of that? Because God refers to us as being his children, and that is the type of love and devotion that he has towards us. That's hard for us to grasp, right? Like, even saying that, I'm like, does God really love me like that? I mean, actually, he loves me much more than any earthly parent could love me. And that is like foreign, right? Like, I was thinking about it. And what if God is up in heaven and he has, like, I don't really think that this is going on, but let's just say he's up in heaven and he's got his First John shirt on. And he's got his First John shirt that looks just like this because he's watching what I'm doing and he's cheering for me. And he's hoping that I do it right. Or he's also disappointed because I probably am going to mess it up. And he's like, oh, girl, we got to work on that. And I believe all that true. Like, you know, is he up in heaven with like a t-shirt and maybe it has your family on it because he's watching and he's invested and he loves you and your family or your workplace or your volunteer stuff that you're doing or whatever it is. We are being called children of God, and he loves us like that. But this verse also reveals that we are considered in his family in the sense of what does it mean to be God's child? So sometimes I will go out and people will meet me after they meet my daughter, or anyway, I'll just be in random situations. I can remember a very specific one. Isabel and I went into a doctor's appointment and we were signing in and they were like, oh, wow. You can tell that she's your daughter because she looks so much like me. Like my children reflect me. So people knew my daughter was mine because of the fact of how I look. But have you had those conversations where you talk to like you're good friends with one person and then you meet the parent or you meet a sibling and you're talking to them and they have the same mannerisms and they do the same type of things when they talk and they say the same kind of phrases because they're in that family? And that's what needs to be true of you and me. Like when people meet us, they need to be like, oh, like I see Jesus in that. Like we need to reflect that. And it's going to talk about that within the passage. Look at verse 2. And we're just going to talk all the way through this with the 10 verses that we're looking at. It says in verse 2, beloved, we are God's children now, and what we will be has not yet appeared, but we know that when he appears, we shall be like him because we shall see him as he is. So it's talking right there. I love this verse because it says we are not yet there. Okay, so what we will be has not yet appeared. It hasn't happened. We aren't all that we're going to be. We haven't created perfection, but when we see him, we will be like him. And my Texas self wants to say, y'all, we are going to be like him because we're kin. Like we're going to look like him. It's like this acceptance of we're not perfect now, but we are in the process. We're in the process of sanctification and we are becoming more like him. And hopefully like that's happening more and more. And the passage itself is going to challenge us in that because we aren't there yet. Our failures are still here and we have to deal with them. So come to verse 4. Everyone who makes a practice of sinning also practices lawlessness. Sin is lawlessness. You know that he appeared to take away the sins, and in him there is no sin. No one who abides in him keeps on sinning, and no one who keeps on sinning has either seen him or known him. Little children, let no one deceive you. Whoever practices righteousness is righteous as he is righteous. Okay, so John is doing this again where he's just speaking in extremes, and it can really cause us fear because it says like no one who abides in him keeps on sinning, and you're like, well, pretty sure I did something this morning that was wrong, so pretty sure I sinned. So does that mean that I'm not abiding in him? Like again, we could pull things out of First John and we could make claims that aren't true, because he just said right before that, within the context, that we aren't what we're going to be yet, and we're not going to be all that until Jesus appears. So what is this? He's talking about, again, that like just having this set on lawlessness, this set on wrongdoing, and not completely course correcting all the time. So let's just define lawlessness is a disposition towards wrongdoing, like having your course set on wrongdoing and never course correcting is what he's talking about. So he's going to bring into our attention a character that he has not talked about yet on the passage, so or in the book. So if you remember, we talked about First John being very circular and like a staircase where you're kind of going up and you talk about the same thing, but you see it from a different perspective. And it's like, let me bring something else up. So that's what he's going to do here. Look at verse 8, and he's about to enter a new character onto the scene. Whoever makes a practice of sinning is of the devil. For the devil has been sinning from the beginning. The reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works of the devil. No one born of God makes a practice of sinning, for God's seed abides in him, and he cannot keep on sinning because he has been born of God. By this is the evident who are the children of God and who are the children of the devil. Whoever does not practice righteousness is not of God, nor is the one who does not love his brother. So with verse 8, we bring on a new person within the book of John, and that's the devil. He names him by name there. So like the devil is this new character that's discussed in First John, and we're going to see three different things about him and about what he's doing. First of all, the children of the devil continue practicing sin. So verse 9, no one born of God makes a practice of sinning, for God's seed abides in him, and he cannot keep on sinning. So by opposite, anyone who is with the devil continues to sin. So the second thing that we see about the devil is that he's been sinning from the beginning. So verse 8 says, whoever makes a practice of sinning is of the devil, and for the devil has been sinning from the beginning. So you remember from chapter 1, we were reminded of Genesis chapter 1 when God created light, and we talked about how Satan came to Eve and deceived her. And that's from the very beginning. That's what it's referencing, even further back than that probably, that the devil has been sinning. And the third thing that we see within this passage is at the bottom of verse 10, it says, nor does one who does not love his brother. So the children of the devil do not love their brothers. And that's pulling that back up from, Dana talked about that. He's pulling that theme from chapter 2 and reminding of us. But this entrance of this new realization about the devil is going to be a big deal. We said that God is light and he reveals reality. So he reveals to us where our actual sins are taking us. And we had talked about that. And then John says, but Jesus has paid the price for that. So when we were together on week 2, we were reminded that the reason that the Son of God, hold on, that's the next thing. I messed that up. Okay, so what is this new thing that he's revealing to us? It's found in verse 8, and it says, the reason that the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works of the devil. This is where John has ascended that staircase, and he's looking back because he's remembering what all Jesus has done for us, and he's revealing to us the reason that the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works of the devil. And that's what John is revealing to us here within this passage that he hadn't said before. Because how had he said it before? Let's remind ourselves back in chapter 1 and chapter 2, he had talked about the fact that Jesus had cleansed us from our sins. That was chapter 1, verse 9. He cleanses us from all unrighteousness. That he also is our advocate. Chapter 2, verse 1, we have an advocate with the Father, and he is our propitiation, which is chapter 2, verse 2. So Jesus cleanses us. He's our advocate, the one that goes before us, who fights on our behalf, our propitiation, our atoning sacrifice, the one who grants us sanctification. So all of those things are saying what happens to us. We are cleansed. We have an advocate before the Father. We have forgiveness. In John chapter 3, he's like, let me tell you something else. What else happened with Jesus and what he did is he destroyed the works of the devil. He gives you the ability to become like Jesus, that sanctification process. He not only cleanses you from your past, but he gives you a future by destroying the works of the devil. That's amazing. A couple of years ago, we were in Bible study going through the I am statements in the book of John. The book of John repeatedly says the phrase I am. Jesus gives illustrations of who he is by saying, I am the bread of life, I am the way, I am several different things. One of the things that he does is he says, I am the good shepherd. So if you would turn over there with me, I want you to see it. It's in John chapter 10. So Jesus is describing this and he's teaching himself. John chapter 10, verse 10. The thief comes to steal and kill and destroy. The thief is Satan. It is the devil. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep, and he who is hired hand and not a shepherd, who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming, leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me, and I am the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And I have, like verse 17, I lay down my life for the sheep. Verse 18, I lay down my own accord, I lay it down. What is Jesus doing here? He compares himself and he says, a hired hand, a wolf comes to get the sheep. The hired hand's like, I'm out of here, take them. Maybe not always, but more likely than that. Jesus says, no, I'm a good shepherd. I lay down my life to protect the sheep. And I didn't realize until a couple of years ago, or I hadn't thought deeply about the fact that Jesus is going on the offense. He is taking care of the wolf, the one that's coming. He is destroying the works of the devil. He's not just rescuing me, but he's destroying his works. And so we see that within our passage today. The reason that the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works. So when he does that work, when he destroys the work of the devil, then we have a contrast of what the children of God are. So we were talking about the devil and what he brings, the continuing sin, what else did we say? Not loving your brothers, this continual thing that we have there. But we have the comparison to the children of God, and we said it is their actual DNA. It is like who they are. And our passage near the end is going to reveal three things to us. The first is that they are born of God. Verse 9, no one born of God makes a practice of sinning, for God's seed abides in him, and he cannot keep on sinning because he has been born of God. Number 2, we abide in him. Verse 9 said that as well. No one keeps a practice of sinning, for God's seed abides in him. And it's something that's been repeated within the book of 1 John. And the last one is that they do not practice sin. So when you are a child of God, you are born of God, you abide in him, and you do not practice sin. Does that mean perfection? No, but it's the constant course correction. It's the becoming more and more like him. Let me read for you in the book of Colossians a beautiful description of what God has done for us when he died on the cross. Colossians chapter 1, verse 13. He has delivered us from the domain of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption and the forgiveness of sins. You can even hear the echoing of 1 John within this verse. He has delivered us from the domain of darkness. Remember the light versus darkness. And he has transferred us into the kingdom of his beloved Son. We are children of God. We are born of God, in whom we have redemption, whom we have forgiveness, in whom we have cleansing, a propitiation, the forgiveness of sins. It's just intertwined, said over and over. I also love if you continue in Colossians chapter 1, verse 21. And you who were once alienated and hostile in mind, doing evil deeds, he has now reconciled in his body of flesh by the death, in order to present you holy and blameless and above reproach before him. And you who were once alienated and hostile in mind, doing evil deeds, he has now reconciled in his body of flesh by his death in order to present you holy and blameless and above reproach. That same, we are not what we are going to be, but it is coming. And you were alienated and you have been brought near. You were not in my family, but now you are in my family. And last one in Colossians chapter 2, verse 13. And you were dead in your trespasses and the uncircumcision of your faith. And God made you alive together with him, having forgiven us all our trespasses by canceling the record of debt that stood against us and its legal demands. He set it aside, nailing it to the cross, and he disarmed the rulers and authorities, and he put them to open shame by triumphing over them. He puts them to shame, the rulers and the authorities. He destroys the work of the devil. So we come to our final statement for today, which is this: Jesus came to destroy the works of the devil so that believers can live fully as the children of God. Children of God have been changed to the DNA level, and his love and righteousness permeates their lives. That is the reality of what he has done. By destroying the works of the devil, he welcomes us into his family, and we continually become more and more like him. We have said that it matters what we believe, and that this book is calling us to think about what we believe. So let me give you a couple of questions. If you have placed your faith in God, do you believe that you are in God's family, that you are a child of God? And what does that change in the way that you live your whole life, that longing, that the belonging, the acceptance, the adoption, the love? That reality needs to shape the way that you live your life. It needs to shape the way that I live my life. I am a child of God. Secondly, do I believe that Jesus destroyed the works of the devil? Do I understand and grasp that? Because that's gonna change how I approach temptation. Like, I don't need to fall to these temptations because I can tell the devil, you have been destroyed. Your doom is coming, and I know it. And I don't need to fall to your temptation. I don't have to walk in darkness. I can walk in light, and I can course correct when I need to. And the last one is, do I believe the righteousness is better than lawlessness? Like, this passage talked about these two, and we said a lawlessness is a disposition that's set towards wrongdoing. Instead, do I have a disposition that is set towards righteous living? Have I set my course toward God and toward looking like him more and more in the glory of him loving me and being like a parent who's cheering on the sideline? You can do it, Mandy, go. And being sad when I make a mistake, but understanding that God has, died for me, and that that forgiveness is available. So thank you for joining us today. And I sure hope that these truths from 1 John are making a difference in your life. They're definitely making one in me. Thank you for joining us.